Welcome to Sculpture Vulture. I'm Lucy Branch, a sculptural conservator and author who is endlessly fascinated by public sculpture. I bring you a series of interviews with sculptors and other fascinating people involved in the field that inspires me, and I hope will do the same for you. You can see the photographs that accompany the episode and the show notes at sculpturevulture.co.uk. Hello, Sculpture Vultures, and thank you for joining me today. We are back with a fourth series, so that means more interviews, more discussions, more thoughts and chit-chat about sculpture in public places, and particularly bronze sculpture, because that is my love, that is my passion, and as it's my show, I get to pick. I have had a really good summer, business-wise. For any of you that don't know or are just joining us, where have you been? I run a conservation company called Antique Bronze, specialising in the conservation of sculpture and architectural features. I've had actually a lot of private work this summer, which I've got to say is really unusual because mostly it's a tiny percentage of my work. Our company works predominantly for local councils, big sort of commercial corporates who own large sculpture or have very ornate sort of architectural features. If you want to think about places like Apple and Selfridges and things like that, you'll very often see us on Regent Street. Give us a wave if you do. And also other institutions, places like Tate and like British Museum and I don't know, the Arts Council, things like that. But I don't know if this is like an unexpected benefit of doing the podcast, but I have had a lot more private work in people's houses. You don't think that there would be large scale sculpture in people's houses, do you? But actually, turns out there is. Very often it's people who are really enthusiastic about certain sculptors, quite a few who've been on this show actually. So people like Tanya Russell and Michael Speller and Bouke de Vries, that kind of thing. So on the horizon, I now have a Michael Faraday sculpture to restore, which is quite nice because several years ago I restored another one, which was, you can actually see on the embankment. Unfortunately, it hasn't been maintained, which it should have been, but there were lots of promises. But it is outside the Institute of Electrical Engineers on Savoy Place, and it's a casting taken from a marble sculpture by John Foley, who was the Victorian sculptor, very well known, lots of sculpture in Dublin, and also everybody knows the Albert Memorial, so he sculpted Prince Albert on the memorial. But it is really nice to be remembered by the Institute of Electrical Engineers, because they've got another Faraday and it's in their Peterborough headquarters. I think he's been languishing in the basement for a while, but they've decided to bring him out and do some conservation work on him and give him a proper plinth and a bit of display, and that's great. But it's also nice to be remembered. I must have done an okay job last time because otherwise they wouldn't want us back to do another one. On a personal note, my family and I have had quite a few milestones in the last couple of weeks, certainly since September. I had a very big birthday, the big 50, and went to boogie in the British Museum with some great friends of mine. A neighbour put it very succinctly. She said it was very on brand for me. I think it was the first time they've ever held a silent disco in the British Museum, and, you know, probably rightly so. It probably isn't really a place that anyone should be boogieing, but we did have great fun and it was really wonderful night. Also, my eldest boy graduated. That was a very wonderful thing. He has studied a subject very close to my own heart, art history, and I was a very proud mum last week. Got in my posh frock and went to the festival hall in London to see him walk across the stage. He's going to be off doing a master's in another year. He's really burning with passion for the subject, and I don't think that happens to everyone. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but I haven't come across as many computer scientists who burn with passion about their subject. They get paid well for it. So maybe that's all you can ask. But no, he's definitely been hugely inspired. And last but not least, my middle boy turned 18. So there's been quite a lot going on in our household. You may remember that in around June, I started to wind down last season's podcast because I was really cracking on with the editing of my novel that I've written this year. And I'm sure you'll be pleased to hear that it's almost at the finish line. It is due for publication on the 18th of October. And I'm currently waiting with bated breath to get like proof copies come through. I haven't seen them yet, but we're going to have even a hardback edition, which is really lovely and promises to be like super amazing. It's going to have a dust jacket and sprayed edges and even sort of like decorated inner papers. Oh, I can't tell you how excited I am. But also, that is my form of creation. I am a creator. I love to bring things into the world that didn't exist before, and that I share in common with all the sculptors that I speak to who may use a different medium than me, but it is that shared love of making something which bonds us all together. So in sculpture news, just to mention that London Sculpture Week returns 20th to the 28th of September this year. So we're knocking on the door. It's a citywide celebration of public sculpture through multiple concurrent programmes: Frieze Sculpture, the Fourth Plinth, Sculpture in the City, the Line and East Bank. I have to admit that none of the works have actually really excited me this year. They're not really my cup of tea. I loved last year. I thought it was really good. We had the great sculpture by Leonora Carrington in Regent's Park, and we also had Mulholly's statue, which I think was a great one as well. It might not be everybody's cup of tea, but it was brilliantly executed and very, very interesting. So yeah, those two really for me made it last year. But I've got to say, I would like to stand corrected. So if you disagree with me and you think that this year's offering is brilliant and don't know what I'm talking about, get in touch with me. Tell me about it. Maybe I'll have you on the show to, set the record straight. I thought I would just mention the very topical news item of Banksy's recent creation. He is a clever lad, isn't he? At the Royal Court of Justice, the mural, it clearly is not a sculpture, so not really suitable for this show, but my mind did connect it, as my mind is always connected to everything relating to sculpture. It put me in mind of other guerrilla sculptors and other kind of guerrilla works of art, and particularly sculpture, and how much I love them. I've decided I'm definitely going to do an episode on that this year. But I thought it was worth mentioning James Colomina, who I hope you know, but you may not. And so if you don't, let me introduce him to you. He is a very mysterious and committed French street artist, and he's made quite the name for himself on the art scene with his daring installations, which are dotted around in public spaces. He is very political, sensitive kind of soul to injustice, clearly, from his work. He's got this iconic red finish to his sculptures, and his work, I think, is very comparable to that of Banksy's. He obviously doesn't ask permission to put his sculptures in place. They just are installed in the dead of night, I imagine. And, he's got some very powerful messages. And I think once they're in place, you kind of think, yeah, that should always have had that sculpture there. They're just right. And that's how I feel about his work whenever I see it. I'm really sad about the Banksy being cleaned off. It's such a shame. I mean, I'm in awe of how he actually managed to do it in that location anyway, because I work in and around the Aldwych, and that sort of area is really, really looked upon by everyone. So how on earth he got in? I know, cameras and things can be altered, but it really was some feat, I think, because even when I've got like 10 permits, I've discussed it with every manager in the building. We've gone and spoken to security guards, we've signed in, we've got our passes, whatever we've done, we still get pulled really regularly. We're like in high vis and like in the middle of the day. People are still, what are you doing? You can't do that here. And I'm like, actually, how on earth does Banksy manage it? I would love to know. Today on the show, I am speaking to Tom Murphy, who is one of the UK's most prolific and admired figurative sculptors. But he's best known for his works that are woven into the fabric of Liverpool. He was born in the city, and his bronze statues have captured the likeness of the cultural icons of that area: sporting heroes, historical figures, musicians. So we've got the Beatles and John Lennon to Bessie Braddock and Dixie Dean, ensuring that Liverpool's very unique story is told through its sculpture and via its people that it recognises are great, and through the city streets and the squares. I just think it is a magic thing, and he has completed other more serious subjects like memorials such as the Hillsborough Memorial and the Blitz Memorial. I began our conversation by asking when sculpture had first come into his life.
Well, almost as soon as I could sort of breathe, almost, I was always making things, and I was very good at it at school. And I used to make little hands and feet, rabbits and all kinds of stuff, make things, fix things, repair things. It was always like that. I think the first inkling of being an actual artist was one day when I was at school and I was messed something up and I got upset. I was very, very young. And the teacher said to me, because I'd been drawing pictures of her, when I was bored in the class, just because she was in front of me. And she said, "Oh, don't be upset, Tommy." She said, "One day you'll be a famous artist." So I thought, that's good. I think that's what I'll be. But then that sort of faded away then. But and I was always good at school arts right the way through, and I just sort of took it for granted. But on the other side of that, I was always taught that there was never going to be any money in it, and it wasn't a career to go into. So I kind of thought, well, I'm good at that, but I want to be good at all the other stuff. And so I think about it too much until a bit later, before I getting close to leaving school, and I thought I might go to art school. But just prior to that, I became really interested in traveling, so much so I hitchhiked to Rome when I was 14. I used to do lots of hitch. I used to do some really mad things, very dangerous things, really thinking back. But I did hitchhike to Rome. I met a young friend on the way, and he went with me too. He got homesick. He went back. But anyway, we did all that. And so when I left school, I was down to just travel somewhere. And so I went on into the Merchant Navy for a while, and I enjoyed that for a while. And then I came back, and then I went to London for a couple of years, and then I got involved into into the retail. And I found out I was very good at working in the non-food section. They asked me to be a manager there because it was a new project for them. You see clothes in shops now, just in Tesco. And eventually I was running my own store when I was about 19. I think I was the youngest manager in the country. It was specialised in non-foods, in Bootle, which is in part of Liverpool. And eventually that store closed. It was amalgamated in the main store. But it was that creative side of me that was making things happen. I'd go in, I'd put things in the right place, make things, even made a Father Christmas that would move, Christmas, that kind of thing. And so that sort of propelled me into another career then, which was working in the sales company. I was there for about 15 years. But all the way through, we got involved in music and groups and things, but a bit of comedy and all kinds of stuff. And I used to write little plays and things, like little sort of sketches and things, comedy sketches. So I was always doing creative stuff, but all the time I was always going to get back to the art. I was going to get back there, and so eventually I just did get back into the art, and I got sort of obsessed with that. And then I was doing painting, sculpture. But the sculpture I found, it was like magic, the sculpture. The painting was quite difficult, but I was getting, used to it, and I was doing my own work, and I was doing reproduction of old masters, learning the old techniques, that kind of thing. And I had some success with that. It's the point where I went to a London company, and they wanted to buy some, but in the end, I didn't want to I wanted to keep it. It's sort of silly, but then I'd started working with people with learning disabilities, and I was also doing a teaching course at John Moores University. So I spent part of the time in teaching art and sculpture, painting, sculpture, and craft and things in the college, and then the rest of the time I was working with people with learning disabilities, doing the same sort of thing there, which I really enjoyed. And I was there for about 8 years. But my big break came because I was used to sitting. I was starting to get a bit old, and I was getting headed towards me, with 30, later mid 30s, and I thought, I need to get going. I'm getting a bit old now for artist wise, because a lot of these painting competitions, they had a cut off around about 38, 39. So I thought, better do something. And while I'm thinking this, I'm looking at two pieces of wood against the wall, and I thought, that's it. And I could see these, they look like two legs, like legs astride. So I thought, that's it, I'll make a big sculpture. And immediately I thought of John Lennon, because I'd already made some models of John Lennon. They were selling. And, because I was actually selling stuff then. And I was actually painting, and I even had exhibitions, and I used to sell a few bits and pieces there. But never a lot to make a lot of money. But I was already started as an artist, and I was actually, making stuff and getting to exhibitions and all that. So I went back and I said to my wife, I said, I've got it. I'm going to make this big sculpture in the bay, because it was in this old little Georgian house then. So I'm going to make a sculpture in the basement. And she said, blinking nuts. So
I bet the air was blue. Not in my basement.
It's particularly as I brought back I'd already cut out these bits of wood, like the two legs. And cut a long story short, although I didn't know what I was doing, I knew how to do it. It's really strange, but anyway, a few weeks later, I'd made the sculpture, and I thought it looked good. I actually finished. I actually made it with wood and plaster and bits of cloth, and then finished all off with fiberglass, and it looked pretty good. So I thought, no, I'm going to do this thing now. So I thought, I'll put it out. I'll try and put it out. I'd kind of lost interest in galleries and things, because all you get is people who go to galleries. You want people, just everyone, a place where everyone goes. So I rang up this company. I said, are you interested in the big sculpture of John Lennon in your shopping mall? And they said, well, I would have to have a look at it. And I said, well, I'll come down and show you a photograph. So I went down, showed them the photograph. And they said, great, bring it down. So I brought it down. And then this is where it got me real break, because walking through the shopping centre one day, it was actually about 2 or 3 weeks later, someone from Littlewoods, Littlewoods was started, Little Catalogue and all that.
It was massive, Littlewoods.
Yeah, it was. And the Moores brothers, who were really famous in Liverpool. They're really like the well-respected citizens of Liverpool. And there'd been this sculpture. He was interested in a sculptor. And he phoned me up and he said, I've seen your statue. He said, I really like it. He said, do you think you could do a sculpture for us? He said, I said, I've got someone in mind. He said, but every time I phone him up, he's drunk. So he said, maybe you could do it. So I said, yeah, I'm your man. Yeah. Now, this is where all my old skills then all kicked in. So, cut a long story short, I went down to the offices and I thought, I wonder how I should dress. And I'm used to being dressed then in a suit, and a briefcase and all that kind of stuff. So I went down all dressed up in a suit, briefcase, and I felt quite confident, because that's what I was used to doing. I was used to dealing with people like them, I used to do deals and all kinds of stuff with people like that. And so when I went in, they all went, "Oh, well, we're expecting some guy in jeans and sandals and that
and
kind
a
of stuff."
ponytail. Yeah.
So I thought, I'm on this. But what they didn't know then is I'd gone to the library and got some photographs of John Lennon, of John Moores. And I thought, oh, yeah, because he's quite old. I mean, he lived to he was 105. And he'd been very handsome when he was young, but he'd had a bit of work done on his face for, I think he'd had cancer in the face or something. Well, so this is going to be a tough one. And I only had a limited amount of photographs, not like now, you press a button and they all come up. So I went home and I made this head, like a little torso. And I thought, I'll take it down maybe, I'll see how it goes. So I had it more or less in my back pocket, ready to bring out. And the meeting was going very well. And they seemed to like me, and they liked the way I was doing the business. In fact, somebody wrote a book about the sculptures, or some of my sculptures, and he mentioned it, that the Moores family were impressed by me because of the way, they felt they could deal with me, and it's a business way. So that was the model I used for years, but I'll still use it sometimes. Well, So anyway, I said, oh, before I go, I said, you haven't told me who the sculptor's going to be. I said, it took a wild guess it might be Sir John Moores. So they said, oh, right, so we can't say who it is, So I said, well, so I had to go at making a little head of him, over the last couple of days. I said, and I've got rubbish photographs to work off, and I knew I got the job straight away because they were like, they all held it, and they all think, great, and he said, so when can you come back, with the design? And so I thought, great. When I think about it, it's kind of crazy because it was something I hadn't actually done before, apart from this one I'd made of John Lennon. But I knew I could do it, but I didn't really know how to make it, but I knew I would get there. So anyway, that's exactly the way it went.
Brilliant. I
And
mean, you look at that and you think to yourself,
mm,
it's not just an ability to make that you had, but
mm,
you'd say a bit, or maybe it's a bit of
mm,
entrepreneurial ability. People find it incredibly difficult to sell things. I mean, I
mm,
talk to sculptors all the time who find
mm.
that selling is the problem. But it sounds like the wheels were turning even when, you didn't really know what you were doing.
Yeah, well, that wasn't a secret. Without those things I did when I was younger, when I was, starting out, all those experiences I'd had, I would not have been the chances are, had I gone then into the art school, which I would have loved to have done, then I probably would have went down the modernist route. Because when I started up again, I was working on both of these things. I forgot to mention between all that, I won this art competition with the BBC Northwest. And it was a big competition, and I got first prize out of 2,000 entrants, and it was all across the Northwest. It was on the television every week for about 6 weeks. And then the prize was a trip to New York to go to this famous gallery, and to what else was there, something else? Oh, to meet this art expert who was going to do have a look at my work, because the painting was pretty raw then as well. Even the painting I submitted was sort of not even quite finished, but it was called The Waiting. It was about all these. It was very imaginative, because that's what I'm good at, really. That's why I do well with memorials and that kind of thing. But anyway, so they obviously liked it. So it was very different. And took it to New York, and but because I knew how these things operate, I went to another guy before I met this other guy who was going to tell me how good it was. And I showed him my folder, and he said that he flicked through it very quickly. And I said, "Is it any good?" And he said, "I don't know." He said, "You've got too many things. You're working on too many things." He said, "You need to." He said, "In America, you're a tin of beans, or you're a tin of spaghetti. You're not all three at once." He said, "If you go around any of the galleries here, you will walk in and you'll see virtually the same thing in different." I said, "That's what we do." And I did go around the galleries. They used to chuck me out because in New York, these are places where they sell paints for even then $50,000, $60,000, and they have like a stable of artists. And if you mention an artist, they literally show you the door. And
Yeah.
if you want to speak to anyone, you'll have to pay us. Because we don't just pick up artists randomly. So we follow people for 2 or 3 years before we even invite them to come down and speak to us. He said, if we don't know you, we don't want to know you. And I said, well, I've got this folder here. I said, yeah, it might be really good. There might be something here that's really good. And he said, yeah, it might be. He said, but we don't know about it. So, I learned a lesson there. So I thought, well, I'll go back to the hotel. He said, go back to the hotel, this bloke said. He said, just leave in exactly what you want to be at this time. So at that time, I just won the competition in painting. So I thought, that's it. I'll take the sculptures out. I'll take this out. Take that out. Because I started doing some props and things for the BBC. I think I'd done anyway. There's all kinds of stuff. I took them out and went back, saw the other guy, and he said, well, you've got a consistent thing. He said all the right things. And he seemed reasonably impressed. And but it did me a lot of good, that. But the main thing it did is not, I didn't get much work out of it, but it gave me the start of a reputation. And then it gave me the confidence then to go on
Yeah.
to do anything. I just thought, well, I must be a good artist if I've done this, done that, and done the other. I had to keep convincing myself because, as you mentioned before, you said all artists, including myself, you always think we're rubbish. Deep
Yeah.
down, we think we want to be great, but we were shy. I'm still shy about my work. I'm still frightened to go in. It even sounds ridiculous. I go and say, "Oh, I don't even like saying I've done this, doing that," because you say, "Have you done that one?" I say, "Well, yeah, I did do that." "Oh, you've done that one," and then all the conversations about me. And I don't mind talking about myself, but you kind of get sidestepped into. But it's very nice. But
But it's that imposter syndrome, isn't it? It's a
yeah,
funny thing that you you don't want to look for approval, but then on
mm,
the other hand, apart from yourself, you've got no frame of reference as to whether something's really brilliant or rubbish. You only can see it through your own eyes, and I think you need that external validation.
a nice story about that particular statue of the Moores brothers is that on the day, and this was a big thing in Liverpool on that day because they got into sculptures and gone off them in the 50s. And there'd been a few that had been put out and then taken out, and people didn't like them, that kind of thing. So I was wondering how it would all go. And I don't know why, but I always felt really, once I'd finished it, I knew I'd always done my best, but I thought it'll be fine on the day. But we got sidetracked, myself and my wife. She, we met through the art. Everything I've done in my life has come through the arts. Has saved me some of But anyway, I met my wife through this painter I was telling you about before that I didn't want a competition with. But she was a journalist for the local paper, and she did a story. And anyway, we were there that day, and all these extremely wealthy people, the Morse family turned up in a coach, and we were spent all day looking after them upstairs because there'd been a mess up and there's nobody to show them around. A lot of them quite old, and we were chatting to them and all the rest of it. And then we came downstairs, and this old lady who I'd been looking after, she said, "Oh, you're great." You said, "Oh, thank you very much. You and your wife being marvelous." She said, "Oh, I made the sculpture." She said, "Oh, you do everything. You do everything around here." But anyway, we went outside. There's a big cheer, and of course, I knew nobody then, and nobody knew me. As far as I knew. And I looked across, and there was all the gang from the people I've been, my friends and colleagues from the place where with the learning disability group, and they were all cheering me, and I thought this is lovely. And
Fantastic.
then also from the college, some of the colleagues there, they were all cheering me, and then because they were cheering, the rest of the crowd was cheering. But I kept turning around thinking, who are they cheering? So that was a lovely day.
Amazing.
There's some lovely things that happen. Sometimes it's feel a bit scary, unveilings and things. But
But
generally, you've got to think that your work is finished and complete, on the day.
well, the problem is with bronze is you can't really change it
You
after
can't change it
after
now,
you've cast it. There's no really snagging at that point. You can do a little bit of fettling. But
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, the job has got to be, it's going to be
Mm.
there a very long time. I mean, you've got an incredible back catalogue.
I can't believe it. So I look at myself. I remember each one's got a massive story to it.
Mm.
So we could talk for days on them. But the I was just at there's just a big rush of sculptures all came once, because the Littlewoods, they were associated with the football clubs. The next commission I had was built Shankly, and that's one of my most famous sculptures, one of my most popular sculptures. It's not one of my best sculptures, but I mean, I'm happy with it. I'm very pleased I made it. But but I think the memorial sculptures are the best work. They're the most demanding. Where you're trying to deal with like the whole of World War I,
I
and
mean,
you've
how
got
do you do it's, it is absolutely impossible, isn't it, to tell that story?
it is. I mean, but some of them are really hard. Like for instance, I was given the commission to do the Hillsborough Memorial. One slip up, and it could all go terribly wrong. But then I was driving along thinking about all this one day. My car broke down, and I walked out into this field. I was trying to make a phone call, and I looked around. So there was 96 trees all laid out. I saw this little plaque, and it says the Hillsborough, memorial for the Hillsborough. And I thought, wow, and the wind blowing in the trees, it gave me the atmosphere.
Mm.
It was nothing. Didn't appear at all in the sculpture, but it gave me the mood for the sculpture. And then the next day, I was chatting to my wife about all this, and I said, I suddenly had this idea of when somebody dies, you have a box and you put the glasses in, the watch in, and little things to
Keepsakes, yeah.
keepsakes, and they're usually in like a little shoebox or something. And I thought, and then at the same time, I was talking about that. I said maybe we should do something like that. It's like something you can put things in, like a letterbox, like a memorial, and then you just so something inside is full of all these memories and letters and all the rest of it. But we nearly did that, but it practically wasn't. Anyway, and then the next thing I went to see an exhibition of Tutankhamun's tomb replicas, and I thought I've got it now because I saw there's this giant, it's like a Russian doll. You've got the golden head, and then you've got the golden coffin, another coffin, and there's another box, and there's another box, and there's a big box right there, and you don't see much. And outside of it, there's like four. They look like angels to us, but there's it's within their own, whatever they believed in, and they're all looking at it. And I thought, this is what I need to do, something like that. But when I was chatting to my wife about it, I said, a square box, and I can put things on the side, and then she said, well, what about a round box? I thought, rounds are better. I said, then I could have a continuous piece all the way around.
Yeah.
So that was their idea. And I thought, well, maybe I could put a little hole on the side. You put all these letters in and that. So you see how the idea
Yeah,
started off.
evolves.
But when I
Yeah.
actually come to do it, they asked me what was going to go on it. I kept thinking of these birds. I kept thinking of birds. So I don't want to put people in it much, but then I thought I'll just start off with a Shankly-esque kind of figure with the arms stretched out holding the scarf. Then I'll go to another one, and there's people like they're all trying to pick up the broken flag, and then it sort of starts off at X's and crosses and Y shapes, and then eventually went to like a Russian type one holding another big flag, and there was somebody with the hand coming up, and there's birds coming out of his hand, and that's where the idea of the birds had come in there, and that kind of gave that atmosphere, of the bushes and the trees blowing in the wind, and I thought, well, I'll count all the birds up, include the liver birds, and they roughly got around about 96. Every time I count it changed, but it's supposed to be 96. But and so it kind of evolves into the thing, and it ends up something which has really got almost nothing to do with it apart from the sound around the top. But it feels right, and it feels nice, and it feels it's beyond it. And I can't explain what it is, but it's right.
Yeah, intuitive that
Mm.
then. I mean, is is that the kind of work that you enjoy doing most? Or
Well,
is
it's the
every
hardest
project
part.
the best project?
Well, every project's the best project. The most recent one is the best one. I think I say all the memorial sculptures. Another one that's a favourite is actually my wife's in that one. Catherine and his son, as he was then. This is a long time now. He's 27 now. He was 2 then. It was the Blitz Memorial, and that was a great commission. That was unveiled by Prince Philip. And anyway, it started off. But I've always tried to make kind of influence out of modern sculpture. I've always tried to get that into my work, but and it never seemed to work. I mean, I did try it on the Moores Brothers, the first one in the base, but they didn't like that bit. So anyway, in this bit, so I was sat there trying to think of something, and the guy who commissioned me, or one of the guys, he said, "We'd love to get some stairs in." I said, "Well, stairs is a waste of money. It's bronze is expensive. You want to. I said, but I'm sat there, and I'm looking in this room. There's a spiral staircase. I thought, wow, that's it, spiral staircase, not the stair, because people used to be found dead underneath the stairs. On the Blitz, people would hide under the stairs, and that's why he wants the stairs in. So we used a spiral staircase, but they became the wings of the bombs as well. They're all like little bits out of them. And so when the sun shone on them, you got it looks like broken glass on the floor. And then I put little boy on the top, and he's holding the Heinkel bomber, the bomber that used to bomb Liverpool. And his mother's at the bottom. Of course, because it's on a spiral staircase, they're all twisting into each other, and and the hands going out, and she's holding a baby. And then we got a letter from a lady, and it was virtually her story. She said, she was, I mean, it's a long time ago now, but she said, that was my baby. He died after a few weeks of being in the Blitz. And she said, and I asked me little boy. And I thought, oh, God, it's like as if it's meant to be. It's quite
Yeah.
moving when those kind of things happen. And then people came from all around the world, who died. And anyway, my wife did the model for it. It was the only time I ever got a model for anything. And she's holding the baby. She's like, "Oh, stand here all day." I said, "Just put your hand up, that's all," as if you're reaching out for something. So she
Yeah.
did. So she's immortalised on that. Although she always said I made it look like a dead fish, but that's another story. But I think she
That's
likes
a
it
bit
now.
critical.
uh, well, I rely on my wife. I ask her whenever I do something, and I'm made up with it, delighted with it. And I say, "What do you think? What do you think?" And she says, mm, "I think the legs are too long. I think the head's too big. Or I think, you know."
Great.
And the trouble is, she's nearly always right, which is most annoying, But
I
she's
know. Well, my husband says, don't even ask me. Do not ask me. You know it's going to end in tears.
well, this is it. But you have to take criticism. But going back to the painting, when I was used to put exhibitions on, and my paintings were very felt most primitive then. They were painted just like a more or less a drawing, and sort of painted all in white, and then I glaze a few colours over them. The themes are very simple, like the fallen priest, the shoplifter. There's loads of them. Like they're all fairly miserable subjects, but they're interesting. And they're made to make you look. That's all they were designed to do, is to make you stand there and look, whether you like them or not. And that's what would happen. People would stand there and look, and I'd stand behind them. They didn't know me, and they'd say, "What do you think of this one, Mary?" And they'd say, "Oh, I don't like it. They think the arms are too long or something." But I didn't mind as long as they were looking. And that's the trick. Get them
Yeah.
to look, because if
Yeah.
because you go to a gallery, we all do that. We walk in, and we only stop when something grabs us, don't we? And when the artist is so powerful that every picture, and they're all great pictures in galleries, but the artist in it is walking through the painting and grabbing you, and he's saying, "Look," and you think, fantastic. So that's what I look for now. We're going to any exhibition. I've had to judge a lot of exhibitions, and it usually works out quite well because I can sense the ones I can sense the ones that are good, but not great. They're brilliant, but you find these other ones that they don't think are that good, and I think this is great. Like,
Yeah.
well, when somebody like my first painting I won a competition with, it was quite badly painted, but the energy is in there. So
Yeah.
this would be my advice to young people: is that no matter every person is unique, and no matter how rubbish they think they are at art, everything they create, as long as it's not copying someone else, it's okay. But if you're something you want to do, or you need to just do that sometimes to train yourself. But if you do something that is totally from yourself, then that is a unique artwork, isn't it?
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
that's what makes great artists, not great skilled artists. But skill is something you can learn. I think talent is something you develop over time. And but if you get the spirit in there, and you know, and that's it.
Do you take time in your week to go see art? Where do you draw from? Because you've obviously got an incredibly sort of fertile imagination,
Mm.
but is it all internal, or do you seep up things from other places?
I look at everything. I look at everything and evaluate it. I always try to be very fair about it, and I can tell. I always know a good artwork when I see it, even if it's something I don't personally like. It's not. I think that's not my cup of tea, but I like it because it's a good idea. It works. It's right for the space. And then sometimes I wonder what I might have done. And I think, well, I mean, part of if anyone was to criticize me, they'd probably say, "Oh, you do all that stuff, and you sort of, figurative stuff and all the rest of it." But basically, another bit of advice, young people: if you want to be an artist, you still have to make some money, and so
You
you
have to
are the
pay the
servant.
bills.
Yeah, you are the servant of the commissioner, and then you have to convince the commissioner that your interpretation of what they want is rightful, that it's for you, right for the artwork, but ultimately, if they say, "I want another arm on it," not that they do, but, it's you are the servant of the commissioner, and it always works out right because most people don't know what they want.
Do you always
Mm.
work for commission, or do you do anything for yourself?
I do, yeah. I mean, at the moment, I've had the three off. I mean, if you look at those early photographs, so you see one called Adam and Eve, but that one's gone now. It's been it was in a garden at one point, and then another two. But that one was another speculative one because I had hired a studio and I had nothing to make. So I made this one of Adam and Eve. But that sculpture led on to a football sculpture for Liverpool Football Club that not many people know about. But it is in a great spot in Kirby in Liverpool near the training centre that they used to use at that time. And it ended up these three footballers, in the air, and it's one of my best sculptures, but it doesn't get mentioned very often because it's a bit out of the way. There's a picture of that one, but it just says LSC training ground or something. And it's just you see this figure in the middle is reaching up. It's called Reach, and he's reaching up for something. And they just basically wanted a sporting sculpture, but they were more interested in football, so we did that. That was a
But I
great
can't think of
commission.
I can't think of a less obvious connection between Adam and Eve and a football sculpture.
You know,
If you were gonna connect the two, I'm not sure how I'd
well,
get
it's the
there.
flying. That the idea is that if you see that one of the football one, and then you look at the Adam and Eve one, the footballer looks as if he's being levitated in the air because you can't see it's only the arms and things that are touching him, so he is actually flying.
Right.
So whereas the Adam and Eve one, he's sort of holding her up, with his hand, and
Okay.
so she's flying. That was it just
It's
one
obvious.
idea.
It's
I
completely
wasn't gonna
obvious.
I wasn't gonna waste the idea, but
Oh,
I'll
I
tell you,
mean,
I'll tell you a good story.
go on.
This is a nice story. This was a few years ago, and you remember the story of the Viola Beach boy, the Beach Boy, the Viola Beach they were called. The four boys who went off a bridge
Yes.
and tragically killed. It's a horrible story, but I got this contact from someone in Warrington. It was one of the councillors, I think, and he said we want to make a memorial for the boys, the Viola Beach boys. So he said, "Would you be interested in doing?" I said, "I'd be delighted to do that." So he said, "Well, I'm meeting the family in a couple of days. Would you like to come down?" I said, "Let's come down." So I said, "Okay." So we made arrangements. So I went down there, and I thought, I can't take an empty hand. I have to bring something with me. So I thought, what's in Warrington? What can I use? What can I think of? The other week, you always go through this big mental process, spend hours, walking around. And then I thought, I know the main thing they've got there, for visitors to see, that's spectacular, is the gates to the town hall, which was commissioned by, I was told, by Queen Victoria, and then she didn't
Yeah,
like
I didn't like him.
and so they stuck them there, and they're absolutely beautiful. And behind them, so I thought they could be the gates of the beach with the group playing in front of them. And I thought, and then the beach sort of becomes like heaven, or wherever we go when we die. And I thought that's a good idea. So I got some photographs out, and because it was such a rush job, and I didn't want to upset the parents, I did a photocopy of all the heads. I didn't have much. I really was chasing the time. I did draw them, but I thought, if they don't like to draw, they won't like the sculpt. So I put all the little heads on them, and I did all the drawing. They all got the guitars and I sent you a picture of it. I don't think you've opened that one, but so that's that. And behind it, there's this beautiful beach, and it sort of goes off into infinity. But so I took that down to them and sat there, and we were talking about it, and they said, "We'll raise some money," and they come up with this amount, and they said, and the council said they'll double it. And so I said, "Okay, so would that be enough?" And I said, well, I've got a design. I said, it's a very rough design. I said, but I had to do it very quickly. I said, but I explained the idea to them, and I could see them all shifting in their chairs. They'd all get really interested. And then I put the drawing around, and I thought, that's it, they love it. He'd only gone through two of them, and he just passed it around. And the atmosphere in the room, the way it changed, it was so moving because of this, this horribleness of this tragedy. And then also all of a sudden this, I said, by the way, so there's anything that you want to add to the figures, like a badge or an emblem or something you wish it said, oh, well, somehow or other we'll get it in there. And they just loved it.
Mm.
And I just felt great that day. I thought, they're smashing this. And then I said, and you can come down when I'm making it, you can come down and look, and they did come down. It's really nice, yeah.
Yeah,
So I love stuff
magic.
like that.
I think
Yeah,
fate's got a lot to do with it, and it's
yeah,
sometimes whether you believe or not. I think sometimes we do have things do happen because they're right for us or not.
yeah. That's right. Yeah, but as I say, my whole career seems to have been delayed, and then I got burst of activity, and it's just thinned out a bit now, and I'm getting on a bit, but I'm still here. I'm still making things.
Right, can you tell everyone where they can find out more about you if they'd like to?
Well, usually if you put my name, something pops up. Sometimes they put all kinds of sculpts I haven't actually made, and sometimes they don't put all the ones I want them to put on. But there's always something there. Just put or contact. If you want to contact me directly, that's fine. Just tom.murphy at talk, TALK. So that's tom.murphy at talk21.com.
Brilliant. Thank you
Mm.
ever so much,
It's lovely talking to
Tom.
you.
I've really enjoyed talking to you.
You too.
What a great character Tom is. I think he could have given us 1,000 stories. Every one of his sculptures he clearly loves, and he sees their creation as part of a progression. It's not just the making of the object, it's the people, it's the scenarios, it's the unveiling day. It's all special to him, it's all part of the work. I thought it was particularly interesting when he talked about his life before becoming a professional sculptor. He said, "So I hitchhiked to Rome when I was about 14." I was thinking, oh my God, I hope my kids don't hear that. Because even now, the younger one's only blooming 15, but, even now I wouldn't want my 18-year-old hitchhiking to Rome. It did kind of make me sit and think. That is a brave soul. That is quite a unique thing to have the confidence to do something like that and to just think, I'm going to sort it out, whatever comes. Maybe he had no idea of what he was taking on, I don't know. But that is not the nature of everyone, I don't think. I think it sets him apart. And then he goes off and tells us about becoming the youngest manager in the whole country to run a store, like 19 years old. I mean, he's a baby, and he's obviously so good at that thing that he does, the presentation of the non-food section, that he's like blazing a trail. He says the skills he learned before he made it into the profession that he's now in have been invaluable for his success in sculpture. I mean, he's very modest, but he really does have a huge catalogue of work. And you can see by looking at that early life that the legacy of work that he's got, and much of it has come through word of mouth and through recommendation. And that's a special thing because you have to be really good with people, and you have to be good at what you do, of course, and professional, and you have to be a cut above the rest to be getting that level of recommendation and that level of kind of momentum that he did get. I mean, he says he's slightly slowing down now. I mean, he's entitled to at the stage he's at in life, but there has been an immense engine of work coming through his studio and pouring out of him, and that work has been much to do with the way people perceive him and what he does and how good he is at making it happen. Another thing he said is that you have to take criticism. Not something any of us like doing, I don't think, but he is bold about it. He has done it multiple times in his career, and it's obviously made him better. He also, he's not just listening to people who really are the pros in the business, although he did clearly, but he says he stands behind people who look at his memorials and his sculpture, and he listens. So he's also listening to Joe Bloggs, and he's thinking that their opinion about his work is valid. Now, I think that is a very humble thing, but it's also a mark of greatness because he is open-minded. He wants to be better And he believes that those kind of unimpeded views have value. And so he goes after it. And I mean, I'm sure none of them say anything very awful, because I don't see how you could. But he's there to learn. He wants to know the defects. He doesn't just want people pandering to him. And I think that's something that creators of all kinds can keep in mind. Having that humility, listening to, people's opinions is an opportunity to learn, and I think it's a great philosophy. Please support the show by buying one of my books. If you like a thriller about sculpture, a kind of mystery or thriller, you'll probably like my series, that starts with A Rarer Gift Than Gold. But maybe you're someone that likes a murder mystery. For that, we've got Restoration Murder, which is the first book in a series as well, although I have not got onto the rest of the series, so I'm afraid if you read that book, you're just going to have to wait for the next one to come out. Or you might like something more practical. I have 2 books on the conservation of bronze sculpture. One is called Bronze Behaving Badly, and the other one is Wax On, Wax Off. They are both very useful books in their own way, but you have a read of their blurb and see which one suits you better. But they are filled with tips, they're filled with years of my experience, and I hope will be useful to you. You can find them wherever books are sold, or online, or you can order them in bookshops. You can even find them in your library, or you can order them in. That would be even better. Have a super couple of weeks. I will be back to talk to you about sculptures of women in London with Juliet Ricks, so I hope you'll join me for that.